All right, hello everyone, and welcome to this presentation on sex trafficking and exploitation. My name is Stan, and I'm joined here by Romel. I'll let him introduce himself, but I am a program facilitator for the Elizabeth Fry Society, Hope and Help for Women, and we have come out in the past and spoken to some of the students at Woodlands to educate them about trafficking and exploitation, what that looks like. And so I know I'm really excited to be here and to present this information to you all. And I'll let Romel introduce himself.
Thanks, Stan. Hi, everyone. My name is Romel, and I am one of the facilitators for Empowering Young Men, and we're happy to be here and just here to educate you guys about sex trafficking exploitation from EFRI Hope and Help for Women.
All right, so we will get started. We also do like to say that we know that some of this information, it can be triggering. If you need any support or need to be connected to resources or just want more resources, we will present some in our presentation, but you are more than welcome to connect with myself or Romel. Our contact information will be at the end, and we can even pass on, or Lindsay actually can pass on our contact information to you. So yeah, we'll just get started and share a little bit about our agency. So there's the vision and the mission. I won't read through that, but it is there on the screen that you can skim over. What I do want to draw your attention to is the words that are on the right-hand side of the screen: prevention, support, reintegration, and advocacy. And so all of our programming here at EFRI work within these 4 pillars. So when you think of prevention, I want you to think of what we're doing right here, right now. We're coming out, we're speaking to you all about exploitation and trafficking in the hopes of preventing that from happening. We also do this, as I said, with students, where we come out and we do a presentation very similar to this one, and we're educating them so that way they have the tools to go out there and identify these situations when they're happening, and they have the tools to know what to do. Then when you think of support, so we have a female mobile support program where, let's say that a young person is going through a really difficult time in their life. That's female identified. They could also be non-female identifying, so they could be non-binary, any type of identities like that. And they are connected to a worker that would help to get them connected to resources, or even if it's just having someone to kind of help with whatever the difficult time is that they're going through. If they just need someone to talk to, or they need to be connected to counseling or therapy or even housing, any of those types of supports, that worker will help to connect them to that. Then we have reintegration. And so we have different residences, like EFRI, and these residences work to reintegrate individuals who have been exploited and or trafficked. And so what happens is, after they've kind of exited the life, they can go to one of these homes. And in these homes, there will be caseworkers there that will help to reintegrate them back into society. So whether that be getting them back into school, helping them find a job, for some of them, even it's helping them to obtain certain identifications and things like that. And so that's where those houses come into play. And then we have advocacy. So let's say that a young person were to get a criminal charge for whatever the reason may be, and they have no idea what's going on with the criminal aspect, the court aspect. We actually have a court support services program where there are workers in the courts that help to advocate on your behalf. So whether that be explaining what the charges is, exactly what the process is when you're in the courts, what happens after, there are workers in the courts to help to do that. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about what human trafficking is. So we're going to give you a definition. So human trafficking, it is every person who recruits, transports, transfers, receives, holds, conceals, or harbors a person, or who exercises control or influence over the movements of a person for the purpose of exploiting them or facilitating their exploitation. I also just want to say, if there's any questions about anything we're talking about, I know Lindsay said that we can write it in the chat. And so please feel free, if there is a question, we will acknowledge those questions and answer them. So, what is sex trafficking specifically? So, sex trafficking involves the force, deception, or coercion of another person into sex or sexual acts for money. The game is slang word for sex trafficking or being sex trafficked. So, this question gets asked all the time. Does this really happen in the Peel region? Yes, 100% it does. I know that a lot of the times, because we don't see it, right? Like a lot of the times what we're picturing in movies or, certain other provinces or states in the States where like there's a street and that's where you go and you know that people are being trafficked or there's sex workers there. It doesn't really present itself in that way. And we do talk about this a little more in the presentation further on. But as it says on this slide, human trafficking is so widespread in Canada that every town that has a highway also has trafficking. So I want you to think of the 401 highway. And if you were to drive from one end of the 401 to the other, how many cities and towns you can cross over into just taking one highway. And imagine that trafficking happens in every single one of those cities and towns, and that is a reality. And so we're going to go over some of the myths of sex trafficking. And so some of these myths are the victim knew what they were getting into. The victim committed unlawful acts. The victim was paid for services. The victim had freedom of movement. There were opportunities to escape, but the victim did not pursue them. Trafficking involves the crossing of borders. Canadian citizens can't be trafficked. And it is not trafficking when the trafficker and victim are related or married. And so these are some of the common myths that come up when we often think of what sex trafficking is. So we're going to talk a little bit about who is doing the recruiting. A lot of the times we have these preconceived notions of what a recruiter looks like, what a pimp looks like, what an exploiter looks like, what a trafficker looks like. And we just want to kind of deconstruct that. So who is recruiting? This person can be a stranger, an acquaintance, a friend, a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or a family member. This person can be male or female, though most are male. This person may pose as being romantically interested in this individual. They may present as a professional. They may offer a service, so present as a professional or offering a service, and they will put themselves in situations to meet ideal victims. And so when we think of who is this person that is recruiting that could be doing this, I know the first point here, it says stranger acquaintance, friend, boyfriend, girlfriend, or family member. I'm going to be completely honest with you all. I have never, in my time of working at EFRI and working with individuals who have been exploited or trafficked, that victim has never identified that person as a stranger, to be completely honest with you. It is almost always a friend, a boyfriend, or a girlfriend. It's usually someone that they believe loves and cares about them, someone who is in their eyes looking out for their best interests. Um, as well, so I'm going to go back here. So as well, even though we in our minds tend to think that this is a lot of the times only males that are doing the recruiting, that are doing the exploiting, doing the trafficking, what we see is there is a very large amount of female to female recruitment. And this is happening, and we're going to talk more about this too with the befriending method, but where someone is pretending to be friends with this individual, and then they are bringing in that idea of either whether it be exploitation or trafficking in the form of camming, webcamming, or stripping, or dancing, or escorting, whatever that may be. But this person is another female who they see as a safe person and they see as a friend. So some of the methods of recruitment. So here we have force, coercion, befriending, seduction, and online or social media. And so how does this happen, right? We kind of talked about who's doing the recruiting. How does this happen? What does this look like? And so when we think of force, I want you to think of very forceful behaviors. I want you to think of actions such as rape, gang rape, mental, physical abuse, where there's that force, where someone is being kind of kidnapped or it's happening against their will. However, I do want to point out the method of like kidnapping someone is something that is very rarely used because it draws such red flags. Like if we were standing, let's say, outside of a school and you see a van come up or a car and grab someone, push them in the car van and drive off, there's a lot of red flags around that. It's not going to be something where you're like, oh, no, that's okay. That person was just getting their ride to go wherever they were going. And so we see that that method, it is used, but not as commonly. And then when we think of coercion, so this method includes being intimidated, being threatened, being coerced in any sense of what that can mean. So let's say that, you know, this individual starts talking to someone in a romantic way. They invite them to go out somewhere, to a party, to a function, whatever it is, and they present that idea of, you know, at this party, I want you to just, you know, maybe engage in some form of sexual activity with someone. And this person says, no, I'm not going to do that. But this is where the method of coercion comes in. And that's where this person will say to them, right? Coercion can look like, if you don't do this, I'm going to find your sibling and make them do it. If you don't do this, you told me where your mom or your dad works, I'm going to find them and beat them up after they're done work. And so we see that this method leaves this individual thinking that they have no other option and that they must do this in order for someone to not get hurt or harmed. And then we have befriending, and I started talking about this one already, but this is where we see the huge amounts of female to female recruitment, where this individual is pretending to be your friend, they're pretending to be someone that they are just, you know, they're building a friendship with. And then we see the idea of whatever form the exploitation or trafficking may be in, it starts to get brought up. What we see is that the idea of maybe stripping or camming gets brought up, but it's very glorified. It's looked at as way, well, you know, you make this amount of money working at Tim Hortons or McDonald's every 2 weeks, whereas you could just do this and you make this amount of money in one night. And then we have seduction, and seduction is actually the most common tactic or method that's used to recruit. And this is where someone is pretending to be romantically interested in you. They will kind of do everything that you would expect for when you first meet someone. And it's that honeymoon phase where you're in love with them and you're going out and you're doing things and you're talking to each other all the time. For the victim, it is all genuine. They are genuinely falling in love with this person. For the individual that is looking to exploit or traffic, it is plain and simple just a business transaction for them. They are doing and saying whatever they need to do to get that person to a place where they can exploit or traffic them. And then we have online and social media, and this is a really big one when we're talking to our youth, because when you think of online and social media accounts, the big thing that we always share with our youth is, what information could I find out about you by just following you on your social media accounts? So whether that be Instagram, TikTok, Discord, Snapchat, whatever it is, what can I find out about you if I were to follow you? But if we were in the same room having like a conversation, I would only know this information about you if you opened up your mouth and you spoke to me about it. But online, what is the information that you're sharing that willingly you wouldn't share with someone, even if you were in person with them, meeting them for the first time? And so now we're going to talk about the cycle of commercial sexual exploitation. So we talked about the methods of recruitment. We talk about what those recruiters might look like. Now this is the cycle, right? Once you're in it, once this person has kind of targeted you in a sense to be a victim. So what we see is the first stage, which is the luring stage. And the luring stage is when this person is just getting to know you. They are getting to know about your likes, your dislikes. They're getting to know about your vulnerabilities. They're just finding out that basic information about you. So they're luring you in, right? They're creating that relationship where there's comfort there, where you're willing to share, and things like that. And then we see it move on to the grooming stage. And the grooming stage is when this person, another word that we use a lot of the time is love bombing. So when this person is grooming you and making you feel so loved and cared for, it's like, think of the happy time when you first get into a relationship and that person can do no wrong. And so they are taking that individual out places. They may be buying them gifts. They may be buying them alcohol or drugs, anything in that sense of just grooming them and making them feel really loved and cared for. And then that moves in to this coercion and manipulation stage. And so I want to note that like these stages too, they can take a matter of hours, days, weeks, even months to go through. And so I know when we're talking about it, it seems very quickly. But this luring grooming stage, it could take a matter of months where you really do believe that you are developing a genuine relationship with this person. And when it goes into coercion and manipulation, this one-time ask, and that's usually what it's presented as, is I just need you to do this one time. I just need you to help me out because I owe someone money. I just need you to help me out. Let's say they're living together because we need to pay rent. We need to pay the bills. And so it's phrased as a one-time act. However, once you do it that one time, what we see is this person has the expectation that you will regularly exchange sex acts for money or whatever it may be. And so when it moves into the full-blown exploitation stage, this is when the individual is being exploited on a regular basis. And as I said, it's the expectation that you will regularly be engaging in whatever form of sexual activity for money or a fee on a regular basis. And so what does being trafficked actually look like? And so this can look like an individual working against their will, where they cannot leave their current situation. And this also goes into the misconception or the myths, right? Where we believe this person can just leave if they don't want to be in that situation. That's not often the case. This person is dictated or restricted movement. And so this means they may want to go somewhere, but they're not allowed to, or they're being told you need to be at this location at this time, or there will be like negative ramifications. Being told to keep in constant contact. So given 2 or more cell phones or no phone at all. So they're being told like, if you do not keep in contact with me, this will be a repercussion. If you do not message me or call me, they may be physically abused, mentally abused, verbally abused. The victim is being moved from one location to the next. And so this goes into that freedom of movement. We think that they can just leave. No, that's not the case. A lot of the times they're being forced from one location to another location to another location against their will. They are being isolated, right? They're isolated from connecting with friends, family members, loved ones. A lot of the times it's like, well, you could just call me, you can just reach out, right? I'm here for you. The reality is a lot of the times they are not able to do that. If it is found out that they are reaching out to anyone for help, that they could get beat up. They could like food could be withheld from them. There's a lot of different things that can happen that really play into that idea that there's no getting out. And these exploiters, these traffickers work very well to cause that mental and emotional manipulation where the victim really feels like there is no hope out there, there's no help for them coming. And the last one has no money or access to money or hands their money over to someone else. And we see this happen all the time. I know that there's the common misconception, well, you're going out there, you're engaging in whatever the sexual act is, and you're getting money for it. You have money to leave, you have money to do something. No. Majority of the time, unless they're doing it of their own free will, right? And that's very limited. There are individuals who do, right, choose to engage in sex work and things like that of their own choice. But a lot of the times when an individual is being trafficked or exploited, they may be going out there and working and engaging in those sexual acts and getting money, but that money is not theirs. It is taken from them right away, and they have to give that money to their pimp, their trafficker, their exploiter. So some of the promises that are made to the victim is that they will get a lot of money. They will get work. They will have access to education. For some of them, they will have freedom. I want you to think of this freedom aspect when you were a teenager. Think of your teenagers or your preteens, and they want to do what they want to do when they want to do it. And so this idea that's promised them that you can, if you come and live with me, if you come and stay with me, you can do whatever you want, whenever you want. Then we have the life of your dreams, where they're promised this dream that's not reality, but it's a life that they're hoping for. Even being provided with financial help for their families, a better life in general, or a promising future. And we see that these are promises that are made. And I know it's easy for us to think, well, don't they see that these are promises that have no worth? No, the reality is when our teens are being told certain things, a lot of the times it's their first romantic relationship. It's the first relationship where they really trust someone and they really want to believe what they're being told. So understanding the abuse. And so this is what the abuse that comes along with exploitation and trafficking looks like. There are threats and acts of violence on a regular basis. We see a lot of isolation and control from the individual that's doing the trafficking and exploitation. Also, humiliation, where this person is humiliated. They are made to feel very little and lesser than. They are being manipulated, where basic necessities to survive are being denied. Things like food, shelter, water, all of those things just straight out being denied to them if they're not willing to engage in whatever the behavior or act that they're being told they need to do. We see this dependency on drugs and alcohol that happens, where it may start off where there is no drug dependency, there is no alcohol dependency, but that individual gets them hooked on a drug or on alcohol in order to get them to comply. A lot of the times too, we see that because they're being forced in to this lifestyle, because of the manipulation, because of the control, they will turn to drugs and alcohol to numb themselves, as well as when criminal acts are committed and then used as threats against them. So when we say manipulation or coercion, where they're forced into doing something and then that thing that they were forced into is then held over their head. And it's like, well, if you don't do this, you're going to get in trouble for this. And we see that happen a lot, as well as threatening by using compromising pictures and photos and videos. So let's say they sent a nude to their exploiter or their trafficker or whoever, their pimp or this person when they're starting to get to know them. And we see that that's used as a threat. Well, if you don't send me another one, or if you don't do this, I'm going to send this to so-and-so, send this to your parents, send this to all of your friends on Instagram, whatever that may be. All right, Romal, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Stan. And the scope, so the scope is kind of like what Stan's been talking about earlier in the presentation, and what you have learned and what you will be continuing to learn, right? So we have here girls are manipulated, forced, and coerced every day. Girls as young as 12 are being recruited. Happens in all communities, whether you're a low socioeconomic community or a high income community, right? Every community is at risk simply because they're children, they have internet access, and you're an individual that wants to explore, right? As kids, we like to explore, learn new things, want to explore new things, right? One of the fastest growing crimes in the province of Ontario is actually human trafficking, right? So when we say girls are manipulated and forced, coerced every day, what does that look like? As Stan mentioned a few things earlier, right? So for example, you have someone, I'll use myself as an example, who does not have access to middle schools or high schools, right? So what I would do is I would recruit a young boy, right, to work for me, and I'll put a bow on it and say, hey, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm looking to run a new business, and I'm looking for young, talented guys who want to work for me, right? Or young, talented individuals who want to work for me. You'll make $500 a week, and I'll pay you cash. All you have to do is make sure you're watching this door, and whoever's coming pays you $50. Don't matter what you hear on the other side of the door, as long as they give you your money, you are good to go. And that's how they are manipulated and forced from the guy's perspective to now being in gang involvement. You've seen my clients, you've seen my face, and you've seen where I've done business. Why would I allow you to leave now? As Stan mentioned earlier, if you don't want to continue this, let's see if your younger sister would. Let's see if your younger brother would. Let's see if your parents would be okay with this, right? And that's kind of how it happens. 90% of sex trafficking victims worldwide are women and girls, right? 98%. 93% of victims in Canada come from within Canada, right? Human trafficking is the fastest growing criminal enterprise globally and will or may already have surpassed drugs and arms as the largest criminal enterprise in existence, which is from the United Nations, which is supremely unbeknownst because you would think like, maybe Apple or a clothing brand like Nike would be the number one, but human trafficking is happening at such a fast rate on the black market that it wouldn't be able to keep up with demands. All right. So, and the invisible issue, what is the invisible issue? So, growing up, we're all understand that trafficking and prostitution happens at street level. We see the individuals walking up and down the road, cars are driving by, you're coming into the car and you're driving off to a secluded location, right? But it has changed. It has changed drastically because of internet, social media, Airbnbs, you name it, right? The sexual trafficking of minors and young women is harder to detect as there is no street level prostitution anymore in the region. It is hidden in hotels, motels, and Airbnbs, right? Because it's not hard to rent an Airbnb. So who is at risk? This list of being risk is not set in stone. There's many other risk factors, but this is kind of what we've seen through the themes that we've found. Lack of awareness about sexual exploitation, right? Hence why Stan and I are here to educate everyone about what is happening in the Peel region, in our backyards, in our schools, and in our communities. Lack of resources, where to get help if things happen, right? At our schools, at our homes, right? Societal norms. What do we mean by societal norms? Perhaps it's just in order for a girl to be, she may think in order for guys to notice me, I may have to wear skimpy clothing. I may have to dance a certain way or be friends with certain individuals, right? In order for me to get noticed, to be popular, to be seen, right? Gang involvement, as I mentioned before, easy to recruit individuals. You're recruited in the gang without you knowing, but you're so deep in it now, I'm paying you. How could I let you leave? Or maybe why would you even want to leave? Maybe you might recruit your friends because they want to make money as well. Sexual abuse, foster care, runaway, homeless, absent parent, and family disruption. All big things. To continue, we have low economic income neighborhoods, peer pressure, which is huge, Everybody wants to have a sense of belonging, a place of belonging. And sometimes peer pressure gets the better of us. And by doing so, we force someone in a corner to doing something they don't want to do. But because they want to be liked, they want to be respected, they want to be welcomed, they do things that's out of their bounds. And to do that, sometimes they put themselves in compromising situations. The lure of money, which is a very big thing. So lure of money, especially for like high school kids, is a big deal because you're in high school, you're just getting to know yourself. You don't make a lot of money. So as I mentioned before, I'm an entrepreneur looking to recruit young talent, $500 cash a week. I just lured you into my business and you have no idea, right? Generational and cultural differences. I wasn't born in Canada, so I came here as a younger child, but I'm very much aware of what's happening in my community, in the country, in my province. Whereas someone who was not born here, who is much older, coming to the country, they may not know what's happening, the ins and outs of the communities and the language, the lingo, right? Internet, online, social media. They may not be aware of these certain things. Unsupervised after school hours and internet access, negative peer influence, boredom, rebellion, and addictions, right? As a kid, when I was in my room, I was in my room, right? But now, because of the internet, yeah, you're in your room physically, but through social media, you're everywhere. Whether it be
Mhm.
video games, online, computers, you're everywhere. And because you're everywhere, you have more opportunity for these predators, for you to be at risk, for them to have access to you. So in recent years, individuals with relatively stable backgrounds are increasingly becoming victims, and these victims are female identifying individuals. So anyone who identifies as a female, you're already at risk just because you identify as a female. You know, so something a little bit about, like, for example, a little example is if I was leaving a basketball game at night, 8 p.m., 9 p.m., even 10 p.m., I wouldn't think twice. I have my headphones on. I'm going to take the bus. I don't think twice about who's following me, or do I have to call a friend to walk to the bus stop, or should I take a taxi because it's so late? It never crossed my mind. But someone who's a female or identifies as a female, it's not the same thing. Perhaps you may have your keys ready, you go into your car. You may have someone on the phone. You may have someone tracking your location. You may be talking on the phone with somebody who's not far away. You may have an escort to your vehicle from a school where they offer these services, right? So that just gives you an example that just identifying as a female puts you at risk. So as long as the demand exists, the root cause of sexual exploitation is the demand to purchase sex, right? As long as individuals are willing to pay for sex, pimps and traffickers will continue targeting and profiting from vulnerable youth, right? So, for example, we said already that individuals who are older adults, predators, pimps, are recruiting these young girls from 10 to 12 years old, right? And these individuals are high in demand in the human trafficking business. And because men pay for sex, it will never ever go down. As we mentioned before, it is a very lucrative business and it would be easily on the Fortune 500, probably number one worldwide, right? And more vulnerable women and children would be forced, coerced, and manipulated to sell their bodies in the sex trade. So, what are the possible signs to look out for, right? These will definitely help everyone to kind of understand what to look for, and kind of help the situation to help someone else, and just to be aware to even have these conversations like with your neighbors and with your own children. So, unknown whereabouts of extended periods of time, right? Sudden changes of routine. Having a child and they're going to school, you expect them to be at school. When they're not at school, they should be on their way home, unless otherwise known that they're going to a practice or a friend's house that you're aware of, right? Um, New friends, boyfriends, girlfriends you have never met. I always say, even to my niece, I want to know your friends. I want to know their names and I want to know their faces, right? And I kind of want to know, like, do they go to your school even? A lot of times, a lot of these kids, especially in grade 8, are befriending kids who are in grade 10. right?
Mhm.
Granted, so because you're in grade 6, you know them probably in grade 8, but them being in grade 10, they're a different individual than who they were in grade 8, right? More than one cell phone or no cell phone, right? Being in high school, being a kid, I don't expect another child to have two working cell phones with two SIM cards, paying two bills, right? That is a red flag. Usually, what these pimps do is they'll give a child or give someone a cell phone, not because they're being nice, but they'll package it as being nice, but it's a way to have constant access to them, right? Receiving expensive gifts, changing appearance and new clothes, right? Changing personality, attitude, and being withdrawn, extremely tired and changing weight, absent from school more than normal. As I mentioned before, if I recruited a child from high school and you're working for me, and one day you're in Hamilton, next day you're in Quebec, next day you're in Montreal, next day you're in Sault Ste. Marie, how would you have time to go to school? Right? Because you're traveling all the time. And drug use, as Stan mentioned before, a lot of these individuals are put on drugs to keep them obedient, right? And a lot of these individuals also use drugs as a form of mental escape, and it's being abused, of course. So what can you do, right, to prevent these things from happening and just protect yourselves and protect your children and just protecting the community? Monitor your child's social media and internet usage, right? Know kind of their username, know what accounts they have, TikTok, Instagram, if they still use Facebook, all these different type of things. Know who they're befriending, and whether it be on video games as well, right? Because you're still accessible through video games. Have conversations about your child's school experience. You know, how was school today is not enough. What did you do today is not enough. Tell me about your day. Who did you play with? How many people were there? You know, who's Katie? Where is she from? What grade is she in? Right? Dive deep. Know your child's friends. Know who your child's friends are, and ask to meet new friends or even new boyfriends. Right? Know where your children are and who they are with. Have conversations with your children about what to do if they are approached in public by a stranger. One of the best things I recommend is a code word. Right? Say, for example, someone approaches your daughter or your son and say, "Hey, your mom and dad told me to pick you up. We got to go now." Your child will say, "Okay, cool. What's the code word?" Right? And if there's no code word, then red flag, you go tell the principal, teacher, someone, right? Talk about the material that we discussed tonight, right? The code word is one of the biggest things that you could use, and I love it. Find a support to talk with them if you don't feel prepared. Your school guidance counselor, school social worker, a teacher. You can reach out to Stan and myself for more information that we could send you, or we can even point you in the right direction, right? And sign them up for our programs, right? Our programs run deep, and we have conversations that they want to have, but they're afraid to talk about, especially with their parents. So our programs kind of run very deep. We talk about how to protect ourselves, protect each other, and the things to look out for, right? And for my program, Empowering Young Men, we go dive with the boys as well, and we'll touch on that a little bit next couple slides. So what could we do as facilitators, as Stan and I, and our work? Prevention education is key, right? So I believe that education is 100% the key to eradicating the problem in Canada, not just here in Halton or the Peel region. So educating your kids, educating yourself is one of the biggest deals. The best prevention is a high level of awareness among young people. They should be knowledgeable about the methods of exploiters, confident in their own self-worth and future options, know their rights, and when they are being exploited, and know where and how to get help if needed. One of the biggest things is letting your kids know that they are worth something more than just a dollar value. They belong, they're loved, they're cared for, right? And once they have a solid foundation at home, it's very hard for these recruiters to try to lie to them and manipulate them and coerce them away from you. You are the family dynamic. You are the anchor that holds them into place.
So this is just some information about my program, Empowering Against Exploitation. It just runs through some of the major information about some of the topics that we cover and things like that. However, we will be running an Empowering Against Exploitation group at Woodlands. And so that I think is starting up in April, I believe. And so if you are interested in having your child be a part of this group, please feel free. You can reach out to Lindsay. I know she's my contact there if there's that interest, and we can definitely get your child involved in this program. We talk about, yes, we do talk about exploitation and trafficking. We talk about things like understanding what predators look like, what's the recruitment process, how does that happen? However, we talk about other topics too, because it's not just those things. Once you know about exploitation and trafficking, it's a done deal. No, we talk about things like self-esteem, trust, healthy relationships, healthy sexuality. We talk about things like what resources are out there? How can you get support? What does that support look like? Sometimes it may be that your child is educated on this and they hear one of their friends talking about this person that they just met and they're so in love and they realize the red flag and they can then help their friends, their loved ones, get that support if they need it, or be like, hey, you're telling me about so and so, but I want to ask you about this, or I want to ask you about this, and so they're able to have the tools necessary to help those around them as well.
Yeah, and definitely my program, Empowering Young Men. So we just finished a program last semester at Woodlands with the grade 7 and 8 boys there. And it went really well to the point where we usually go 6 weeks, but I went 8 weeks for those guys because they had so much to say, so much to talk about, and so many questions that they had. I believe it was with Principal Richards, Scott Richards. It was amazing. And we hope to be continuing the program as well this semester with Woodlands. Again, same thing as Stan mentioned, talk about health relationships, healthy sexuality, social media use. We talk about a topic called My Brother's Keeper and what that means, masculinity and journey of a warrior, just to name a few, which is amazing.
Mhm.
So where to find help? So we have some information here that's very important for, as Dan mentioned earlier before we started, just some help where you have the Canadian Human Trafficking Hotline. If you suspect anyone being trafficked or you want to find help or you just want some more information, definitely reach out to them. We have our company, eFry. You could call us, get more information. We have different programs for individuals who are looking for specific needs. And of course, we have the 24/7 crisis support in Peel and the victim services. Definitely reach out. They're awesome. They have information that they could give you, and they're very prompt in getting help as well.
And
And
so
of
now
course,
if there are any questions or any information that wasn't clear that you'd like us to go over or expand on, we can definitely do that. So I'm not sure, Romel, Lindsay, if anybody asked any questions.
not from mine that I
Just
see, no.
checking right now. No, actually, no questions as of yet.
Okay. So I'm gonna leave this screen here just with my information. I'm a Stan and Romel's information. You could take a picture of it, screenshot it, whatever it is that you need to do. We are very aware that questions may not come up right here, right now. They may come up later on this evening. They may come up tomorrow, in a week from now, a month from now, 6 months from now. We want you to know that you can email us, you can call us, you can text us, and we'd be more than happy to connect, whether it's you or a young person, your child, with that information if it's needed.
I did get one question here. Is there anything we can do about suspicions?
So if you suspect, right, that is it someone that's being trafficked and exploited, or is it someone who's doing the trafficking and exploitation? I just want to be clear with the answer.
Okay, is there anything we can do about suspicious adults hanging around playgrounds or schools?
Okay. So I'm not sure if this is from the same person or not, but I'll answer it like twofold. So let's say you're suspicious that your son or daughter might be involved in trafficking or exploitation. What you want to do is you want to probe, right? I know sometimes it can be really hard because they can be very withdrawn and closed off, but that is something that you want to do. You want to try to probe and just see like some of the signs that we also identified, right? Like, has their appearance changed? So appearance can go both ways, where it's like all of a sudden this individual is all about getting their nails done, their hair done, their lashes done, name brand, or it could be the opposite, where they're now a little bit more withdrawn, they're wearing baggier clothing, they're trying to hide their body. And so you want to look for the different signs of if you're suspicious that someone may be being trafficked or exploited. And you want to pay attention, as Romel said, who is this person hanging around? Is their usual group of friends no longer their group of friends? Are they now hanging out or going and meeting up with so-and-so who you maybe only started hearing about a month ago, 2 months ago, and it's not their usual group? And so, yeah, is there anything we can do about suspicious adults hanging around playgrounds or schools? You need to report that. You need to say, right, like whether you're going to that school and you're telling the office, the principal, whoever it is, like there's someone that I've noticed that's here all the time. They're not picking up any kids. They're just there. Yeah, you want to, I would say, report that. Romel, what do you think? I think that's the best thing you can do with that.
Yeah, definitely. One thing I definitely suggest is because it's a community, you kind of know, you kind of see familiar faces. You may not know or talk, but you kind of see familiar faces. Oh, I see this person all the time. They pick up their son or daughter. Definitely just recognize who's part of your community. That's why it's so important just to be involved. And on top of that is, as Stan mentioned, are they picking up kids? Kind of sketchy behavior. Even ask your kids, hey, have you seen that person before? Because kids are very, very knowledgeable in what's happening in their communities, sometimes more than their parents. So that's definitely what I'd recommend, for sure.
Yeah, and yeah, like even the kids, the students, the youth would recognize that. Like I was at a school where one of the youth in my program, she was just randomly getting picked up by a brother. And when we were talking, she didn't have a brother, right? So who's this person? And that's where other students were like, oh no, that's definitely not her brother. That's some random guy she started talking to, right? Like that was like her friends that were saying that. And so the youth also, right? If they're like, no, that's some weird guy that keeps trying to talk to girls at the bus stop, right? Like they're gonna know. And so it's important to ask those questions. And yeah, I would say definitely make the school admin aware of anyone that's kind of like creeperish or just like it's just a red flag.
Yeah, and be friendly, be friendly. Like, hey, I never seen you around here before. What's your name? And then sometimes it just puts them on notice that you notice them, which is good. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so those are the two questions that came up. If anyone else has any other questions, please add. If not, as mentioned, through email addresses, phone numbers, or even any of the guidance counselors, administrators at the Woodlands, we're here to help and support. If you have concerns, if you just want to maybe talk something out because you're not really sure, we would be happy to meet with you as well.
Yeah. And we're also able to, I've had some parents reach out where they're like, I want to have this conversation with my teenager. How do I initiate? How do I start that? Questions like that are very common. And so please feel free to reach out. And we can help kind of walk you through that, give you pointers as well of what that can look like. I see another question came up. What if they wait a few blocks from school? It's a tough one. right? When they're not like right there. And that happens a lot of the times where it'll be like they're waiting at a bus stop, they're waiting down the street, so they're not getting kind of those red flags. The best thing is to report suspicious behavior, especially, as well as if you notice that it's always this one individual that's going to that car or a group of individuals, making like your school aware of it too, right? So that way they can also touch base with those students, and provide support if needed, because that's something that can happen as well.
Yeah, definitely. If as the other question is, so it says, so can the school still do something if they are off property? Definitely. The school could, the school has good relationships usually like with police, and if they suspect something's happening, they could definitely send like an unmarked police car just to like pretend they're picking up someone else, but they're really on watch. You know what I mean? So like that's one of the ways that they could just see the individual, and then maybe just do something if it's off property. But there's not much we could do, not much they could do, unless the person does something. But because it's like a public school, they could definitely be, they could be there.
Yeah.
Okay, yes. And again, just to follow that up, if you do have suspicions, whether it be you're worried that your child might be involved or even your child's friends, right? You've just noticed in their behavior something's a little bit different, or if you're noticing, suspicious cars or people that are not necessarily lingering on school property, but lingering around the neighborhood. We were always happy to have that conversation or to direct the conversation to our lovely team at Elizabeth Fry, as well as administrators and community supports that way. So you don't have to do it by yourself, most certainly not, and you don't certainly have to live with the doubts and worry. We're here to help you anytime. So I think that might be it, and we can call it an evening. If anyone else has any questions, we can also follow up after the fact. We're going to be this, as mentioned, I think earlier, this presentation has been recorded. We're going to send it out to all families and staff at the Woodlands for them to review. And if you're watching it again and you decide, you know what, we're going to watch this as a family, I think it's a great idea. And as we said, we're doing presentations throughout the rest of the school year as well. So the whole goal is to have everyone educated in human trafficking, building healthy boundaries, what is consent and consent culture, and just giving our kids the tools necessary to navigate these concerns and this reality that we all have to face. Mississauga is a big place, but there's always certainly something going on, and it's good to have that awareness. And so I do want to thank both Ramel and Istan for joining us this evening. And for everyone, I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening with your family or friends or whatever it is that you have on the docket.
Thank you, Lindsay. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, everyone, take care and have a safe evening.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.